The night he walked out that door, he had no idea his single decision would shatter the woman who spent her entire life protecting him. This story begins with a quiet home, the smell of worn-out teacups, and a mother who believed love alone was enough to guide her son through life. She raised him alone every meal and through overtime, every birthday built on sacrifice, every dream stitched together with nothing but hope. Yet the day he made the choice, she feared the most. Everything inside her broken away she never expected him to see. I'll take you back to the moment when their world started to crack, when a mother's trembling hands held onto the last pieces of a boy she thought she still understood, and when a son, blinded by pride and the wrong influences, walked toward a path that would change both their lives forever. This story is not about blame, it's about how love can be pushed to its breaking point, how one mistake can echo through a lifetime, and how some hearts don't break with a sound. They break quietly, all at once. And as we unfold their journey, you'll see how a mother's silent tears can carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears, and how a moment that seemed small to him became the wound she never fully healed from. She raised him alone, but his one decision broke her completely. From the day Michael was born, Sarah understood that her life was no longer her own. She was only 21, abandoned by the man she thought she would build a family with, carrying a newborn in her arms while holding back tears in a tiny hospital room. But even then, when she looked into her son's eyes that held both innocence and possibility, she made herself a silent promise: whatever the world takes from me, it will never take anything from you, and that promise became her life's mission. She worked double shifts at a diner, slept only for hours a night, and walked to work in the rain just to save bus fare for baby formula. Michael grew up watching her fight like someone who had no option but to win. She attended every school event, even when she was exhausted. She sat with him every night, helping with homework she barely understood. She clapped the loudest at every achievement, even the small ones, and she hid every tear that fell when he wasn't looking. To Michael, she was a warrior. To Sarah, he was the only reason she kept breathing. As he grew older, Sarah noticed the world changing him. He became quieter, more distant, more hungry for things she could not provide: expensive clothes, a better life, social status, recognition. She tried to talk to him, but he always brushed it off with a half-hearted smile, saying, "Mom, I'm fine. Don't worry." But she did worry. She worried because she knew how easily the world could swallow a boy who felt overlooked. She worried because she knew that sacrifices invisible to children often turn into resentment when they become teenagers. She worried because she loved him too much not to. When Michael turned 19, things began to shift more sharply. He started coming home late, sometimes past midnight. His excuses became blurrier, his smiles became forced, and the smell of cigarette smoke lingered on his jacket. Sarah confronted him gently, but he brushed her off. The phone bills increased, his grades dropped, and she found herself staring at his closed bedroom door every night, wondering when she had lost the version of him who used to run into her arms after school. Then came the night that changed her forever. It was raining heavily, one of those storms where the sky seemed angry and the streets looked like dark rivers. Sarah was sitting by the window waiting, the clock showing to 17 a.m., her chest tightening with every passing minute. When Michael finally walked in, soaked and trembling slightly, she could sense something had happened. Something bigger than missed curfews or bad decisions. She asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer. He just walked past her, heading straight to his room with a trembling breath. But as he closed the door, a folded paper fell from his jacket pocket. A contract. A signature. A decision. And when Sarah unfolded that paper, her hands shook. It was more than a bad choice. More than a teenage mistake. It was something that could take him away from her, something dangerous, something life-changing, something he never should have agreed to. The boy she had raised with love and sacrifice had made a decision that could shatter everything she had built for him. And in that moment, standing alone in their dimly lit living room, the mother who fought the world for her child felt her heart break in a way she never imagined possible. The choice he thought was freedom for years, Daniel had watched his mother work herself to exhaustion, and somewhere deep inside him, resentment began to quietly grow. He loved her, he knew that, but he couldn't deny the bitterness that came every time he saw her worn-out hands counting coins just to keep the electricity on. He started to believe that the life he wanted, the future he dreamed of, was trapped inside the four walls of their tiny apartment. And slowly, the idea of escape became more tempting than anything else. It began innocently, staying out a little later, skipping their class here and there, hanging out with friends who made him feel like he wasn't the boy from the struggling single mother home. They didn't judge him for his old shoes or his cracked phone screen. With them, he felt equal normal. But acceptance sometimes comes with a price hidden so well you don't notice until you've paid it. One of those friends, Tyler, was charming, bold, and reckless in a way Daniel secretly admired. He lived without fear, without restrictions, without responsibilities. He said whatever he wanted, did whatever he wanted, and Daniel envied the freedom in his voice. Tyler saw Daniel's frustration, and he weaponized it gently, with smiles and promises. "You're 18, he would say. You don't owe anyone anything, man. Go live your life. Your mom will be fine." Daniel knew Tyler couldn't understand, but the words fed the part of him that desperately wanted to breathe without thinking about bills and responsibilities. The part that wanted life to be simple, carefree, like everyone else's. One evening, after a long argument with his mother, Daniel stormed out of the apartment. She had begged him to stay home and help because she was running a fever, and her shift at the laundry had drained what little strength she had left. But Daniel had plans to go out with Tyler and the others. He felt trapped by her request, cornered by duty, and instead of compassion, irritation took over. "I'm not your husband, Mom. I'm your son. Stop expecting me to fix everything," he yelled before slamming the door behind him. Her silence on the other side of the wood echoed louder than any scream. Outside, the night air felt different, cold, sharp, almost punishing. But Daniel ignored the guilt poking at his ribs. Tyler and the group were waiting for him at the corner, laughing, carefree, everything Daniel wanted to feel. And for a while, he did feel it. They joked, walked around town, ate fast food, and talked about futures far from responsibility. But halfway through the night, as they sat by the river, Daniel's phone buzzed 3 times. He didn't look at it. He knew who it was. He knew what she would say. And he didn't want to hear it. Tyler leaned back, smirking. "You gotta stop letting her run your life," he said. "You're not a kid anymore," and Daniel, desperate to prove he wasn't weak or tied down, turned off his phone. In that moment, Daniel believed he was choosing freedom. He believed he was choosing himself. But what he couldn't know was that this single decision would break the one person who had sacrificed everything for him. While he laughed with friends under the street lights, his mother sat on the apartment floor, clutching her chest, whispering his name through pain she couldn't fight alone. And the message she sent him, the one he didn't read, was the one message that could have changed everything. Her final text glowed unseen on his darkened screen. "Daniel, I need you. Please come home." For weeks, Daniel avoided home, staying out late with the new friends who made him feel older, stronger, untouchable. His mother noticed the shift immediately, the way he no longer sat at the kitchen table to talk about his day, the way he kept his phone face down. The way his smile had turned into something sharp instead of warm. She tried asking him gently at first, then with worry, then with fear. Each time, his answers grew shorter, colder, until the silence in their small apartment felt like a punishment neither of them deserved. One evening, the tension finally cracked. Daniel came home hours after midnight, carrying an energy that wasn't his, reckless, arrogant, a mask he wore so he wouldn't look weak in front of the world. His mother was sitting on the couch waiting, her eyes swollen from crying but her voice steady. She asked him where he had been. He shrugged. She asked who he was with. He told her it was none of her business. She stood up and told him it was her business because she was his mother. And that's when Daniel said the sentence that would echo in her heart forever, "You'd Auntie own me. I can live my life without you." The moment the words left his mouth, the air felt thinner, heavier. She just stood there, staring at him with a heartbreak that made him feel smaller than he'd ever felt. She whispered, "I raised you alone, Daniel," but he was too far gone to hear the tremble in her voice or see the pain in her shaking hands. He pushed past her and walked into his room, slamming the door behind him. That night she sat in the kitchen until dawn, replaying every sacrifice she had made, from skipping meals so he could have enough, to working double shifts so he could go to a better school, to hiding her exhaustion so he would think his childhood was normal. She wondered where she went wrong, what she missed, how her love had somehow turned into a burden he wanted to escape. And when the sun rose, she quietly decided something she never imagined she would: she wouldn't chase him anymore. But Daniel's decision, the one that would break her completely, came the next afternoon. His new friends convinced him to move out. "You're 18, bro," they said. "You don't need a babysitter." The idea filled him with a sense of freedom he had mistaken for adulthood. So he packed his clothes, his sneakers, and the new identity he thought he had found. He didn't leave a note. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even check if she was home. She stood behind the half-closed hallway door, hidden, watching him carry his bags outside. She never stepped forward. She never asked him to stay. She just let her heart crack silently, painfully, completely. When the door closed behind him, the quiet in the apartment felt like death. She walked into his room, touched the empty bed, and finally let herself cry, the kind of cry that comes from years of holding everything together. And Daniel. He walked away feeling like he had won something. Independence. Control. Freedom. But he didn't know yet that the world he was stepping into was far colder and far hungrier than he was prepared for. He didn't know that the people he trusted weren't really friends. He didn't know that every step he took away from her was leading him toward the moment that would destroy the life he thought he wanted. And the moment he would finally understand what his mother meant when she said she raised him alone. The house felt colder that night, colder than any winter Daniel had ever lived through. After the confrontation with his mother, he had stormed out, slamming the door so hard the old wooden frame trembled. But hours later, guilt pulled him back home. The moment he stepped inside, something felt wrong. The lights were still on, but the silence was unsettling, thicker than the heaviness in his own chest. He called out, "Mom," but no answer came. He checked the kitchen, the living room, her small reading corner where she kept her favorite tea mug and old family photos, but she wasn't there. Panic began to wrap itself around him like a tightening rope. He moved toward her bedroom, pushed the half-open door, and saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, shoulders hunched, her hands trembling in her lap. She didn't even look up. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. She looked smaller, as if life had shrunk her in the span of one evening. He stepped inside, but she still didn't look at him. "Mom, I'm sorry," he whispered. But instead of anger or tears, she only released a long, defeated breath. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice fading around the edges, "I spent my whole life trying to make sure you never felt alone. I fought the world so you wouldn't have to. But today, you made me feel like I failed you." Her words shattered him more deeply than any scream could have. He dropped to his knees beside her, holding her hands. "You didn't fail me. I failed you. I said things I didn't mean. I've been so stressed, so angry, and I took it out on the only person who ever stayed." She finally looked at him, her eyes tired, but still carrying that familiar, unconditional love. "You're my son," she whispered. "I can handle your anger. But not your distance." Daniel felt something break open inside him, a dam of years of resentment, pride, and pressure finally collapsing. He rested his head on her lap, like he used to when he was little. "I don't want to lose you," he said through a choked breath. She gently placed her hand on his head, stroking his hair the way she did when he had nightmares as a child. "You won't lose me," she said. "But promise me something. Don't let the world harden you. Don't forget who you are." He nodded, tears spilling freely now. "I promise." She reached into her nightstand drawer and handed him an old envelope. "I was saving this for the day you truly understood what sacrifice means." Inside the envelope was a small savings passbook, 3 decades of deposits. Tiny amounts, $20 here, $15 there, sometimes just $5. All saved from skipped meals, extra shifts, and sacrificed dreams. "This," she said softly, "was supposed to be for your future. But now I want you to understand your past too. Everything I did because I believe in you." Daniel felt a weight heavier than anything he had ever carried. He hugged her tightly, afraid she might disappear if he let go. "Mom, I don't deserve you." She gave a tired, gentle smile. "Then become the kind of man who does." That night changed everything. Daniel made a decision, not the reckless, painful one he had made earlier, but one born from clarity. He chose to rebuild, to grow, to fight for a better future, not just for himself, but for the woman who gave up everything to raise him. She didn't need perfection from him. She only needed effort. She only needed love. And this time, he was ready to give it back. As he whispered, "I'm here, Mom. And I'm not going anywhere again," she closed her eyes, finally at peace. The truth of that night lived in Daniel's heart long after the arguments had faded, long after his own pride had settled into something quieter. Something almost like regret. He finally understood what his mother had carried all those years, the weight of raising a child alone, the sacrifices she never complained about, the dreams she quietly folded away just so he could chase his own. And now, as he stood outside her room, hearing her soft breaths in the dark, he felt that weight for the first time. Not as a burden, but as a truth he could no longer ignore. He walked in slowly, seeing the exhaustion on her face, the kind that wasn't from age but from hurt. And in that moment, all of his anger, the distance, the stubborn pride. It all felt small compared to the love she had given him since the day he was born. He sat beside her and held her hand gently, the same hand that once held his when he learned to walk, the same hand that wiped his tears when he lost his first game, the same hand that stayed steady even when life kept shaking her. He whispered an apology that trembled in his throat, not because he needed forgiveness, but because she deserved to hear it. He told her he finally understood her silence, her strength, her fears, her endless giving. He told her she didn't fail him, he failed to see her. And as she opened her eyes and looked at him, There was no anger, no resentment, no I told you so, there was only love. A love so deep that even his worst mistake could not erase it. The reconciliation wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real is what heals. Daniel promised himself and her that from that day forward he would not just be her son, but her support, her partner in life. The person who finally gave back what she had given him all his life, loyalty, respect, and love. The story ends not with a perfect family, but with a broken bond slowly being repaired, thread by thread, hand in hand. Then don't leave without supporting the channel. Tap subscribe, hit the bell icon, and become part of this family where emotional, meaningful stories like this come alive every week. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them.